to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Anne-Marie, as you know, we have many guests on the program who have been through various trials, tribulations, very traumatic situations, sometimes life-threatening, all kinds of stuff that goes on. And in most cases, the story that comes after that is here's how they recovered from it, here's what they learned from it, they want to share it with the world and so forth. I can't remember the last time we had a guest who said, go row a boat.
That's not the usual kind of answer we get, is it?
It really isn't, no. But it is in this case, because Brooke King is going to be telling us exactly how she is going to go row a boat in a very major way. And
Wow.
It's her response to her own particular situation. So, well, first we'll bring her onto the show and then let her tell the story in her own words. So, Brooke, welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad
Thank
to
you,
have
guys.
you here. Yeah.
I will say the rowing, as well as some of my other activities I've done, are definitely on the quirkier, more unusual side. That's kind of my thing. I always love finding adventure, and I had known about this row for a really long time, for about 3 years, because I've been really as a hobby trying to pursue interesting and unique adventures and knocking off a lot of different things from my bucket list. And this particular row is what's called ocean rowing. So they have these boats that kind of look like the safety vessels on cruise ships. So they're completely self-sustained. They're meant to be able to handle really intense waves. And a lot of people will actually row, surprisingly, from Europe to America, like across Atlantic, 40-day long row. And I just thought that was the most incredible thing. I love trying really intense physical challenges. And I was like, okay, maybe a little shorter than 40 days. It's pretty intense. So I had found this organization called the Nomen Campaign, where they are rowing for HPV-related cancers, and they do kind of a mini version of the Atlantic row in Ibiza, or in the Mediterranean Sea from Barcelona to Ibiza. And it takes about 3 or 4 days to do that row. And so you're manually rowing. It's me and 3 other women. And I'd always wanted to do this, was not able to get a slot, was talking to the race director for about 3 years. And then a little less than a year ago, I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer. And huge shock, especially at my age, for 29 years old. I live a relatively healthy lifestyle. I'm always doing like physical feats like the row. And as I was going through my treatment, just realized, wow, this row has never been more meaningful for me, especially since they are also for Cancer Foundation, and finding others that have been affected by cancer, and using that as a way to say, hey, I've always been a person that needs to put my life in motion when bad things happen. It's what helps me recover. And this was a way for me to say, hey, I'm not only getting through my cancer, but I'm really like beating my cancer, and going above what I can do to heal. And so, yeah, I'm still actually going through cancer treatments, and I am really preparing for this row and training, which is upcoming in July. So I'm very, very excited about it.
Yeah. And I kind of made fun of it, but actually, it's not something to make fun of, because I mean, rowing across the Atlantic, I mean, that sounds crazy to me. It literally does. I'm just like, yeah, not happening over here. But to you, it's like, yeah, let's bring this thing on. I like this. So different reaction going on there. But in the process of coming to the conclusion that you wanted to do something like that, it ties in directly, obviously, with your own personal experience with cancer that you're in the process of overcoming. And it also fits beautifully, from what you're describing anyway, with your own mindset, with your own mentality. In other words, you're taking your existing mindset and you're leveraging the good part of it, the part that really works for you. And I like that. That's really great.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like I've always been the type of person that tries to say, what are the positives in this situation? What can I learn from this? And cancer in particular is a very difficult thing to look with that lens at. And it was obviously extremely shocking and it was a challenging experience. But a lot of people say that papillary thyroid cancer is quote unquote like the good cancer, which is also an odd thing to reckon with. But
thing, right?
yeah, but truly it has been the case. It's a very asymptomatic cancer. So it was very shocking when I found out about it. It was a lump that just from a regular checkup from my doctor had noticed on the lower part of my neck, right above my collarbone, and went to get it checked out. Found out when I was at the doctor that my cancer was pretty progressed. I have metastatic papillary thyroid cancer, and they measure it in levels as opposed to stages. And I was at there's 6 levels, and I was at level 6. I had about 23 tumors total that they ended up removing, which most folks with this cancer have about like 2 to 5 tumors.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a really fast and quick recovery, but a lot of the adventures that I've gone through kind of prepared me to say, hey, I can get through this. I've done hard, weird things. There are positives that come out of it. And I think one of the positives is like kind of my new outlook on life. Right? Like I think a lot of ladies in particular will struggle with maybe hitting their decade birthdays, right? Like I'm turning 30 next year. And I was joking with my friends. I'm like, oh my God, like I was so nervous about that birthday. And now I've never been more excited this year to be like, hey, I have this new lease on life. I have all these perspectives. So it has been in retrospect now, like truly a really eye-opening experience for me. And I have found joy, not even just sharing this with people, but then also feeling like the way that I want to live of seeking joy in the small things of my life has never been more meaningful. And so that now has become a big cornerstone in how I'm trying to walk through the world.
Yeah, it's amazing how often these significant bumps in the road that we encounter encourage us to adopt a greater level of appreciation for the little things in life. And that's exactly what you're describing. And it's wonderful that you're doing that. I mean, it's kind of rough that we have to do it that way. I mean, it wouldn't be nice if we just goes like, hey, okay, we're just going to open the door here, make it nice and easy. But no, sometimes we just, it's almost like the universe has been tapping us on the shoulder and we're ignoring and we're ignoring and we're ignoring. And finally we get whacked across the head because the universe says, come on, pay attention. I'm trying to get you an important idea here. Do this thing.
Absolutely.
So it's a story of how you basically listened to what you were being told.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think as well too, a lot of it has made me realize like what I want to be doing with my time and spending my time a lot more particularly. Also just learning about just like the love that I have around me, even just sharing this story. I think that's something that people with cancer really struggle with is how do I share this with others? How do I like seek out information for myself? What is this burden to the people in my life? Because I think that's a really intense thing with your family members, right? They feel the emotions as deeply, if not even more deeply than you, especially because while I've been going through it, it's been so surreal. And I was able to move through treatments super fast. And so I almost didn't have a chance to really realize what was happening. I was just in a go mode, which is kind of how I ended up in this row. That's just like how I am. I'm like, okay, what can I do? What are the next steps? And so just sharing alone has been so beautiful. Like the amount of people that I've heard and didn't even realize surrounded by me have been going through similar things, or how cancer has touched their lives, or just illness has touched their lives. And I think sharing as well is something that I was maybe a little nervous about, that I now have a really great appreciation for and really encourage a lot of other people who might be going through similar things to do.
It does help too that we live in an era that is more receptive to that kind of sharing than, say, when I was younger. When I was younger, there was some degree of acceptance, much more than in the previous generation, but nowhere near where it is today.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, just the engagement I've even had from sharing online and having strangers engage with me that I've never met in my life share their personal stories is really beautiful. That's one of the reasons I have been, and one of the cornerstones of the bucket list that I've had for the past 3 years is just meeting interesting, kind people. And that's also been a part of my cancer journey, and helped me cope with some of the acceptance I have to go through of like, this is just an ongoing part of my life now. But I would say a lot of that came from some of the earlier adventures in my life that I've been doing and have carried on now.
Do I dare ask what some of those earlier adventures were?
Oh, most definitely. So back in, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, when we were all kind of experiencing also a big shock to our lives of the world completely shutting down, changing. Yeah. I had a bit of a realization. I'm originally from Chicago, and I decided to sell my house. I had lived in the city, really loved it. And then the mass exodus out of the city was a huge ghost town. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the few people in my friend group who had owned a home. So all of my friends like left. So it was such a weird change for me seeing the city. And I was like, okay, I work remote now. I don't have any obligation to be here. Why don't I just sell my house and see what else is out there? I have all these different outdoor activities I would have loved to be doing that I can't do in a city. And Chicago's quite far. I know we were talking to Anne-Marie. 2 hours is a long drive in in London. In America, I drove like maybe 40 hours was the longest drive I did. I sold my house and I moved everything I had into a school bus. And I saw as much of the country as I could, trying to find a new place I wanted to live, and realized throughout the process that what I wanted was more an unconventional lifestyle than it was that I wanted a new city to live in. And so I got myself into quite a few different fun experiences during that process. Ended up in Tampa, where I did cowboy mounted shooting. That one was super fun. Found out that you can surf on rivers, got a surfboard, which very odd to be in the middle of the country and be able to purchase a surfboard, but was in the middle of Arkansas, was able to surf on a river, went to New Orleans, I did a tour of a bunch of the oil rigs right off the coast and then did a big fishing trip off there too. So those ones were amazing. And then it eventually ended up bringing me even to Europe, and I'd done a couple trips there where I traveled to Turkey, and just that one was probably my favorite. I found the world's only floating grocery store in Turkey.
Okay.
That one was super, super fun. So I've just been all over the place and trying to find like things that make me excited, get over my fears of doing things alone. And along the way, I've made a bunch of amazing friends, met like a bunch of lovely people, and that's kind of been my experience now.
And one of the main themes that we return to over and over again here on the program is the theme of going within, doing the work within in order to improve your self-confidence, get a better life, accomplish the things that you want in life, attract the things you want in life, and so on and so forth. I'm wondering if you could touch on that aspect of your journey. Yeah.
I really love that idea. And I know that's part of the LOA, right? The law of attraction. I do think that I believe that if you build joy and excitement in your life, it will find you as well. I like honestly feel like I'm living proof of that. And that was one of the things that I think built my confidence as I was trying things off my bucket list. Because a lot of it at first was I have these interests, and they're kind of extreme, right? We talked about my rowing trip, right? That's not for everybody. It's kind of aggressive. It's something called type 2 fun. I don't know if you've heard of type 2 or type 3 fun before. So there's this idea that there's type 1 fun, which is like you could go to the beach and suntan, right? No effort, just going to be a good time. You're going to smile and be happy about it afterwards. And it was easy to do during the process. So that's like type 1. Type 2 is where you're doing something that's really not fun in the moment, but in retrospect, it's awesome. So like you could go for a really like long run, or like a marathon would be an example where someone's having fun in the marathon, but in the moment it's like painful. And then type 3 fun is where it's not fun in the moment and it's not fun afterwards. It was just a great story. I have not reached top type 3 fun yet. But I truly have done a lot of like that type 2 fun, and building confidence is a huge component of that. If even just saying like, maybe it's type 2 fun for you if it's scary to like go to the movies alone, right? But then you actually had an awesome time. Like, we all have small fears, especially when we don't have a group and a community to try things with. And that's where I think the law of attraction has come in my life. Is I truly did start small. I didn't just like, I mean, granted, I did move into a bus like pretty immediately. That's a little extreme. But I think it was really just getting the confidence to say, I have this thing that I want to do. I'm not sure who wants to do it with me. I'm just going to do it alone. And because I went into those experiences with excitement and curiosity, that's really where I was able to find a lot of interesting friendships, really coming back to me. And I do truly believe like that's been a big part of both my experience with cancer and my experience traveling and adventuring, that most people want to do good. And most people are kind. Like, I'll never forget this one time I was in New Orleans, and I feel like New Orleans is notorious for being maybe not the safest city. And as a woman traveling alone, that really made me super nervous. And it was probably one of the first big trips I'd ever done by myself.
Oh, okay.
And I'll never forget, I was unpacking my car to put a bunch of my stuff in the place that I was renting at the time, because I was only there for like 3 weeks. And I was so nervous. And some guy came up to me and startled me and was like, hey, and I jumped and freaked out. I was like, oh my God, like, please don't hurt me. Like, I'm fine. And he was like, oh, your stuff just looks heavy. Like, can I help you? And I think about that a lot when I do new things. It's like, truly, I've been in some situations that maybe wouldn't be considered the safest, and I've only been met with kindness. And I really think people just also are seeking connection too. That law of attraction is also banking on the fact that a lot of other people are looking for what you're looking for, you know?
So Emery, I can kind of guess, but are you like a type 1, a type 2, or a type 3 seeker?
I'm probably 1.5.
I like that. What about you, Walt?
Depends what we're talking about. I think it really comes down. I'm never really interested in pursuing type 3. To me, that's
I still haven't thought of anything type 3 related that makes sense. I am a sucker for a good story. So I will probably end up there at some point in my life, but I haven't come up with anything yet. Nothing on my list comes to mind yet.
Yeah, that doesn't really sound all that interesting to me. Type 2, it depends what the type 2 is. You know, what kind of activity are we talking about? Because that's really what it is. You know, it's a more aggressive kind of activity. So for instance, I'm a social dancer, you know, not ballroom, but you know, swing hustle, that kind of thing. And if it's anything associated with that, well, yeah, I'm up for that. Let's go do that. You know, are we talking about rowing the Mediterranean? Nah, not really. Not my thing.
I wonder if you would like a traditional. Have you heard the term misogi before?
No.
This one, I think this is part of when I was thinking about sharing my story online. I was trying to come up with names for how I would present myself, and misogi kept coming back to me. It's this old school Japanese tradition. And I think it directly translates to like, I think ice water or something similar. Okay. And it's where these monks will go essentially on like a pilgrimage to a waterfall in the middle of winter. And then they'll stand under the icy waterfall, but it's a part of the meditation practice. Yeah. So it's all like founded in like meditation beforehand to prepare. And the idea is that if you do one extremely hard thing, once a year, and they say it for one day, like I'm not doing it total justice, but it's like specifically out of 365 days a year is like a part of the description that they have. And it says that like that will set your year for a lifetime. I wonder if like that's harder, but I feel like the spirituality of it might resonate with you, of like maybe doing some of the mindful practices with them.
I think that it's fairly safe to say that the idea of spending 5 minutes under that kind of a waterfall is beyond my interest level.
Okay. Understood.
Let alone a full day.
I've tried to do the cold water shower things in the morning. No, the heat's much nicer.
Yeah.
It is. That is something, the ice challenges, that is something that's lower on my totem pole as well. I love me a hot shower in the morning. Even when I have my bus, I had a hot shower every day when I had my bus. I had a full shower on it. The campgrounds had awesome showers. So like, I'm very much with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Emery, you said you were 1.5. What for you is 1.5? What do you mean by the half part?
Well, I just think because I'd probably be more like a 2. I do love doing things like, before I had children and was like completely settled down, I'm quite happy to go zip lining and just doing stuff that I wasn't comfortable. I don't like heights, but I did it because I wanted to try it. And, I'm quite happy to go on a really scary roller. Just things that make you, I don't want to do this, but I really do want to do this because I know I'm going to feel good. But I think I've kind of, as I've got older and become a mother, and I've kind of had to rein that in a bit, but I'm going to bring it back when I'm older, for sure.
Is that what it takes, getting older?
I just think it's I'm not going to say I'm putting my life on hold or anything, but just having the kids and the family, it just changes your priorities. That on its own is a number 2. That's sometimes a number 3 level.
I would think, yeah.
Sometimes
all 3 in one go.
I've got a clue what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm enjoying that ride at the moment.
It definitely keeps you busy. There's no doubt about that.
For
Any parent can
sure.
say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. So, all right. Well, now that we've got the lay of the land, Brooke, let's dive into what it is. I mean, we know that you're trying to get the word out that the kind of activity that you dove into is what you recommend that people do, and you're looking for followers who are interested in all that kind of thing. But let's talk about where you have gone with that journey. In other words, we already know that you're rowing with the Mediterranean, but what about the other part where you're doing the connecting part? What's happening with that piece of it?
Connections with like new folks in my life.
Yeah.
I think it's really been me saying, so when I got diagnosed with my cancer, I had to go on medical leave, and really with that experience, because finding treatment is kind of like a job in itself. I couldn't believe, like, when I say that it's like a good cancer, I truly believe that, based on just having my wits about me and being asymptomatic. Like, that was a huge part of being able to get on the phone. I was on the phone probably every single day for 2 weeks straight, talking to doctors, trying to get appointments. Because I was told it would take me probably 8 months to a year. Like, I would still be waiting for treatment right now. And thank goodness that I am not. I'm like 3 months post-op at this point, because I have a much more aggressive cancer than people that have papillary thyroid cancer. I have a subtype of it that's a lot faster growing.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, there was so much that I wanted to share about myself with the world as I was going through those treatments. And I'd already had so much time off of work that I just decided, like, I have no time to waste. I have no time to lose. I want to do this full time and share the journeys and experiences I've been doing for the past 3 years with the world. Mm-hmm. And part of that is where I'm building interest and engagement back with me, where truly, like, as I am sharing some of the adventures I'm going on, I would love if people were to ask me, like, hey, how do I get out of my comfort zone and find more joy in my life, or find the courage to try something on my own, and including those people in some of the future experiences that I have. I have still quite a long list. It's growing every day. I always add silly new things to it. And so I'm really hoping that people just engage back with me, whether it's about stuff they're interested in, because a lot of what is on my list comes from people sharing interesting things, like even just in their town. Like, I love like a silly local festival. Those are so interesting to come by. Like, one of the things that's always been on my bucket list is it's called a pumpkin regatta. So apparently I'm just rowing all the time.
Okay.
But it's this event that was founded up in Nova Scotia, and there was a gentleman who he bred this really large pumpkin seed, It's probably like a 400-pound large pumpkin. And he was trying to promote selling these pumpkins and selling these seeds. And so he came up with a Halloween event where people would grow the pumpkins, carve them out, and they're so massive that you can just sit inside of them. And people will like row these pumpkin boats in the little bay area in this small town from Nova Scotia that it's from. I've
got another co-host named Jody Lynn Craven who owns a farm in Alberta, Canada. And she and her husband are also big pumpkin growers. Like they grew one last year that was well over 1,000 pounds. And I proposed this idea to her of turning them into, shells of soap to float on the water. I don't think she thought of that one.
Heard of it. Yeah, and they recreated it in a couple of towns too. I want to say there's one in Washington in the States as well, on the West Coast, because they thought that idea was so fun. So it's like stuff like that where it might not seem like, I think a lot of times when you share really extreme adventures and events, people are like, oh, I don't know if I have any of those lists, but I also love like small, silly in between things. And if anyone has stuff like that, like I'm actively seeking people to share those ideas with me and meeting them there and having them kind of guide me through it and making friends that way. So it's stuff like that I get really, really excited about. And hopefully I'll just continue to find new friends through that experience.
What do you like about those connections that you make that way?
Oh my gosh, so much. I think when you go somewhere new, whether it's like locally in your like home country or abroad, when you find an event that is specific to where someone's from, it immediately creates an excitement and a familiarity. Where sometimes, like, say you go to like a tourist destination and then you go and you sightsee, it's a lot less connected because that's kind of what people from that town are expecting. So when you have that intrigue for something that's like unique to what they've been exposed to, you almost immediately have that friendship. And so I've just found like lovely connections with people that way. And I'm huge on asking like deep questions. I'm like, that's how I find a lot of these things. I'm just in like these internet rabbit holes. And I'm that way when I talk to people in person too. So I'm like, how did this pumpkin regatta start? How did you get into it? How many times have you done it? How long does it take you to grow these pumpkins? Like all these things are like genuinely like exciting to me. So I think feeling that excitement back from other people is what has built like deeper connections for me of, oh, they're really excited to share too. And I love that. I, like deeply love that. It's funny. My mom actually, when I was living in my school bus and traveling around, I was able to see a lot more of those sides of like the countryside of America. And a lot of people who are traveling that way, they kind of advertise it online as this like cool thing to do that young people are doing van life, but it's really just retirees. And I joke with my family. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm like just passionate about van life as much as I'm passionate about like retirement life. Like this is it. Like these people got it right. And there's so much to share as well. Like, true. Like a lot of my friends now are probably all over the age of like 60. That's why my mom was like, maybe you should move into a city because you need to meet like a young man. Maybe like just get a partnership. Stop
Mom
hanging out.
Doing her job.
And I was like, Mom, I'm trying. Like I just love people in retired communities. So yeah, I think that plus just people who like are excited to share something that's special to them, or like, oh wow, like it also I think makes people feel special too. I
was just about to say that, but the fact that somebody's taken a real interest in something that they're passionate about, they will just feel seen and heard. And I could just feel the brightening up.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, the kindness that people have when you're excited about something. Or know something that feels a little bit more like local to them, they'll just like, I've gotten invited to so many dinners, like invited to stay in people's homes. Like that's like what we were talking about earlier. I truly believe people are just like want to do well and are looking for connection and kindness. Like that's when it's exactly what you're talking about there, Anne-Marie, that's when I like feel it the most. Yeah.
I live in New England, and as I was telling you before we got started on the program, I'd been in North Carolina over the weekend and was flying back yesterday, actually. And on the flight back, I was in a row with 2 other women, and it turned out toward the end of the flight, we didn't really talk during the flight, but toward the end we started conversing because I was at the window side, and the woman who was in the middle seat turned to me and said, "Do you live near the airport in Hartford?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I live about 15 minutes away from it." And she says, "Well, I'm visiting Connecticut for the first time. What should I do? Where should I go to have some fun?" And it cued in my mind the fact that, first of all, when you live near like Connecticut and New England, it's other than cold weather, it's a resort area. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do in this area. It's a very popular destination for people across the country, around the world. But when you live in a place like that, you don't even think about it. I mean, unless you're living right where you're like on the shore where all the tourists are showing up, or something along that line, unless you have that, you don't think about all the stuff that goes on around you. But her question cued the thought in my mind. And then the other woman who was sitting on the other side, she also lives in Connecticut. And the two of us just started batting ideas back and forth about what this woman could do. We had like 3 months worth of things for her to do in a 2-week period. I mean,
that's amazing.
More than she could possibly do. And it was one of those deals where, I would come up with an idea and then she'd say, "Oh yeah, and you got to do this and this and this," and that would cue something in my mind. And we're just going back and forth, naming all the different things you can do. And when we were done, I said to myself, "My God, there's a lot of things you can do in Connecticut." I mean, I had no idea. I hadn't thought about it.
That's awesome.
Actually, so it's another way that by having those kinds of conversations, you're also reminding the person who's connected to them that they're connected to them.
Yeah.
That's a big deal too, and of course that's where a lot of the enthusiasm that you're experiencing comes from. I mean, literally, the other woman who was from Connecticut said, "Give me your phone number, and we'll text back and forth, and I'll guide you through."
I was just gonna ask you that. That's so funny. Yeah, I think people's willingness to like share and exchange is amazing. I will say one thing that's hard is to maintain those relationships moving forward, and I know there's a lot of negativity around like doom scrolling and being on our phones too much. But I will say I feel the positives outweigh the negatives. Like it's hard to balance, but it's hard to stay in touch with someone that you've met for like 15 minutes and you kind of share a moment and a connection with, or maybe even too, I think some of these experiences have been really exciting where we did something really cool together, like the cowboy mounted shooting that I did. Oh my gosh, one of the most fun experiences that I've had in my life. You basically like get on the back of a horse and you have to wear, I actually found this sport because you have to wear all old 1800s Western clothes to compete in it or else you're disqualified. Okay. And I love costume. I'm like, that's so fun. Get me into this sport. And then you wear like holsters and you have 2 revolvers on your hips that have, it's kind of like fake bullets essentially because it keeps the horses safe. And then you shoot a course of balloons and you go through and it's like super badass, but it's not something I'm doing on the daily. And so it's maybe, yeah. So I hadn't even ever ridden a horse before. Maybe when I was a kid where they like plop you on a horse, but I have no idea how to control a horse or ride a horseback. And it's stuff like that where maybe I don't have a direct reason like I would my really close friends to call that person that I had this amazing trip and experience with. But now because I'm online, I'm able to create connection points. And I actually think that's a huge benefit of sharing what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It gives people a reason to like reach out to you. So I think sometimes people feel maybe weird about sharing things that they're doing in their life. And I actually find that's a really easy way for me to stay in contact with people that I've built these really cool moments with, but maybe our lives don't intersect outside of that. So it's just like a quick way for me, like some of the people that I've met, like the folks with cowboy mounted shooting, like he got a dog and I'm a huge dog person. So I was able to reach out to him when he did. I was like, "Oh my God, your puppy's so cute." So it's like little things like that, where it's so much easier to stay connected to such a wide, vast group of people now, which I really love.
But by the same token, honestly, most people don't follow the kind of path you're following. I mean, it's not like most people go out there and say, "Okay, I'm just going to live a whole bunch of things because I'm creating this bucket list and by God, I'm going to go through the whole list. And I'm just going to enjoy them." That's not what most people do.
That is fair. I'm a bit of an extreme individual, but I will argue I do feel like people have small things on their list that maybe aren't as extreme or odd that they've always wanted to try to do. that if like you went and took like maybe like something I want to do, I live in Miami now, is like take Spanish classes. I think there's a lot of people here that really resonate with that moved here and they're like, oh my God, my life would be so improved if I could speak that language while I'm here.
Miami, yeah.
And I think a lot of people are waiting for having another friend to say yes to that with, instead of finding that courage within themselves of like, let me just try this once. Or maybe it's like a financial commitment issue of like, I don't want to spend money on this like long course or like my time. And I would say like the creativity with which you can set aside maybe 10 minutes a day to try and find something for yourself and doing it with other people. Like I think too often like self-improvement is encouraged individually, which is very valuable. Like you could do like Duolingo with that scenario, right? Sure. But there's also plenty of people like, I know that there's people who it costs $5 a day to go in person to meet with them for 30 minutes of coffee and they teach you Spanish. It's like almost the same cost as Duolingo and you're in person interacting with people.
Yeah, so 100 times more effective.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's things like that where I think you can still put it on a micro scale. And I do feel that seeking and finding those experiences is about being creative with your time instead of, which is hard because we have so much decision fatigue of like, how do I do this? How does this happen? But even like little things, right? ChatGPT's free now. Be like, give me a new idea. Like, how do I do this? I do that all the time. And it's super helpful. And it saves you a lot of time and can help you to come up with ideas outside of the box that get you out of your house. Because I think a lot of us, including myself, believe it or not, I know it sounds like I'm moving around all the time, but I spend a lot of time in my house. And whatever I can do to like get myself out of it and around other people is just like so amazing.
Why do you think that's such a priority for you? I mean, I'm glad that it is, but why?
I mean, if it's not obvious, I'm super extroverted. So
I think that's a huge... Yes, I think Marie noticed that as well. Yes.
That's definitely a huge part of it for me. I think we all, even if we're introverted though, I think as I've grown and gotten older, and done so much on my own, I've been able to find a space that is more introverted where I maybe feel a little bit more drained from social experiences, but those still feel valuable to me. And I don't know. I think I just believe that like we are here to connect with one another. I think that might be from maybe one of my deep-seated values. Maybe that's where it comes from. And it just gets me enthusiastic and excited, and it makes my life feel like more purposeful, like especially with stuff like my cancer that I've gone through. So much of that experience is asking yourself why. And I think that's why cancer in particular, because there's so many illnesses people have that are, even with my cancer, like much worse. But maybe they have like an explanation. I think having something where you're never going to get an answer can drive you mad. And so I think even in that scenario, connecting with people and being able to help someone else who's gone through what I have or share that, like that in itself gives me a lot of purpose. So I think that is something that's like connected me to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of reciprocal value in that kind of a shared experience.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And when you have that level of reciprocity, it's also where the bond is going to increase.
1,000%. Yeah. And I think also some of the stuff we talked about of making people feel good about themselves and excited, it builds a level of trust. And once you feel like you can trust a stranger, that's when I think the deeper connections form. And you can find those friendships. And I think it's hard, like we were talking about, it's hard to stay in contact with those folks, but I think remembering what those moments are for, of like, everyone can look back fondly at that moment, even if you don't stay in contact, is still super valuable. So yeah.
Well, that makes total sense to me. Just from I've been doing this podcast now for 12 and a half years. Done over 2,000 episodes, hundreds of interviews with all kinds of different people.
Yeah,
I've loved almost all of them. Emery's been part of a significant chunk of them. I think you've loved almost all of them as well. That's probably a fair statement, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Now, how many of them do we actually stay in touch with? I mean,
so
it's a
hard.
very, very small percentage. I mean,
That's true.
it's just the realities of life. But that doesn't make the contacts any less valuable. They were wonderful.
Yeah.
The connections were terrific, right?
Learn something every time. It's, every time there's some nugget of juiciness that I can take into my own day-to-day life. And that makes it purposeful.
Yeah.
Exactly what you were saying, Brett.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing when you do make connections that I've had to like learn as I've grown, is to remember that like something is still valuable, even if it doesn't necessarily blossom into something massive. That you should still look back at that fondly, and don't beat yourself up, because especially as an adult, it's scary to make new friends outside of your circle. And just remembering that that person is still your friend, like even doing stuff alone now that might be embarrassing, right? I do stuff that embarrasses myself on a daily, but really I'm the only person embarrassed by it. And I think that's something that's like related, where no one's really looking at you. I think most people want to be kind. Like if you had a good experience with one person, I'm sure that they look back the same way. So I think allowing ourselves to get out of our own head in that way is a really critical way to go into those new spaces, and challenge ourselves with things that scare us.
And since you're a self-described extrovert, and I think it's quite evident that you really are, a big portion of extroversion is that you like that kind of connection. You like making the new connections with people and so forth. So my next question might be a little bit unfair because it's so much part of your nature. But for someone who is feeling like, they know they need to start doing something to kind of break out of their non-comfortable comfort zone that people live in, and they're afraid to do it, or they aren't sure what to do next and so forth. I mean, if you're talking to somebody like that who's just not quite figuring out how to start breaking through and trying those uncomfortable things, what do you say to them?
Yeah, I think it's trying and doing baby steps is number one, which might be cliche, but it does sound like I just kind of dove in, but when I sold my house, I was really, really afraid to do that. And I've grown up in Chicago my whole life. Yeah, and I was really anxious that I was making the wrong decision, especially within like home ownership. I think that's something that everyone has, especially like it's like part of the American dream. You're supposed to take these steps and reach them. And I think trying to remove ourselves from those larger ideas and starting with those small steps. Like before I lived in the school bus and did van life, I actually lived on like a friend's boat for like 3 months and was figuring out how to sell my house. So I got comfortable with like just the physicality of living in a mobile structure, because all of those systems are the same. And that gave me the courage to be like, okay, I can handle this. It's not so scary, because I didn't know anything about any of those systems. And then even after that, I did the bus life because I wanted to live in a tiny home full time. And I went through and I did this whole structure. I worked with a builder for an entire year, coming up with a system that I could move my house physically on the road. Which is harder than I realized it would be. Almost bought a semi truck because of it, which is a whole other story in itself. But essentially, because I wanted to do that, I'm like, I can't just throw all my money at this right away. This is like all my savings. This is a really scary decision. So the bus that I did, I didn't buy it or build it. I rented it. So it sounds like, I think when we see people doing things, they seem like, oh, they've like just went for it and got there, but there are always like little baby steps to do. And even before I lived on that boat, I traveled for an entire month to drive down from Illinois to Florida to get to that boat. And that was when I did like the river surfing in Arkansas. I did that experience in New Orleans. And as much as I am extroverted to go, I like really wanted to be there for the costumes. I love Halloween. It's one of my favorite holidays of all time. But I dressed up by myself and walked around town. And that was very scary, because you're like, is everyone staring at me? And for some reason, no one was in costume. It was Halloween day and no one was in costume, because it's such a nighttime party town. And I don't like to go out at night when I'm traveling by myself, because it's just like a safety thing.
Absolutely.
So I think it seems like there's always like a small, tiny step that you can make to build that confidence, because it really is just about like building your personal confidence and your courage and realizing that most people are doing their own thing and so are you, and that's okay. So I feel like, I don't know if that's helpful or if that answers the question, but that's kind of been my experience.
Well, I mean, I certainly think it's helpful. One of the things that comes to my mind, crosses my mind as you're describing that the first of all, baby steps, that's a concept we incorporate a lot here in the conversations of the show, because baby steps are the way to really do anything new, no matter what it might be. But also the idea of taking baby steps into something that may or may not be socially acceptable.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the fears come in, and that's where people find themselves getting stuck. You know, they don't want to do anything that violates the norm because they fear that will actually ruin their chances for the kind of connection that they're looking for. But you're promoting the other idea. You're saying, well, that's actually how you create the connections.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, the number one thing outside of a baby step that I think is critical to a bucket list is doing something that you're deeply enthusiastic about. I think that's actually a key component that you'd need to combine with those things, because if you're trying something that you're not super excited about, you're not going to draw in an equally excited party. And those are the people who I think you're going to connect with the most deeply, is to say this interest is shared amongst the two of us, because that's really the foundation of a lot of friendship, is like you have something in common with someone. So I think trying something just to try it is a lot harder, because you're going to be in your head, and you also don't have any stepping stone to move beyond of like, oh, I can talk about this a little bit more. I have deep questions about this, which is where a lot of, I think, connection grows. And there's very few things that I think I've done that I'm not deeply excited about. And I have noticed the ones that I'm maybe not as passionate about, that maybe someone recommended to me and I tried, I didn't form a lot of connections, or I felt super self-conscious in those situations. So I think that's a huge component too.
Yeah, I was going to say, just even if it's just going to do a 6-week course somewhere, because if it's something you're interested in, you might meet like-minded people, and you can have these conversations that you enjoy being part of, which completely goes into what you were saying, Brooke.
Yeah, exactly. Even like the stuff we were talking about, right? Like the type 1, type 2 fun. It's like, if it was important to you, maybe to build a connection with the person you went with. So maybe I would convince you, Walt, we'll keep talking. You'll come do the Misogi with me. And Marie, you can come. But it's
maybe
also
not
like
the Misogi, but I follow the point. Yeah.
But yeah, like it's doing ones like describe exactly as you guys are describing, of like, what is my version of that fun? That is such a critical component to finding those like future connections and friendships for sure. Or even just good experiences, honestly, ultimately, because life's too short. Truly, like, take advantage of all the time that you have. And I've never felt more deeply connected to that idea than now in my life. And yeah, it's too short to not only do things that you don't like, but do things with people you might not connect with as well. And I think that's a hard thing for people also too, is maybe there's like connections in their life that aren't serving them, and it's hard to take steps back from that and find new ones. Like, there were people in my life when I lived in Chicago that were really lovely people, that I ended up kind of saying, hey, maybe we're not aligned with how we want to spend our time. I still care for you. I think you're a lovely person, but I need to go embark on finding people who have some of those shared connections. And now I know people who want to row across the Mediterranean Sea. That's like a difficult person to find. And I have like genuine connections I can call down and ask, like, is this something that you'd like to do? So that's a huge part of it too, I think.
Yeah, I can't really imagine Chicago being a hotbed for people who want to row the Mediterranean. So yeah, I get the point of your story. Anne-Marie, I mean, is any of this kind of influencing you to think maybe you can do some things you had kind of put on that back burner and thought, well, one day maybe?
I've literally written down, think of a bucket list, because I love that idea. I mean, obviously there's things I want to do, but actually, yeah, just making those baby steps and just doing little things. Because I was just like sat here thinking, oh, I could go and see a show, or I could go and do this. And, you know, there are things that I am pushing myself to do. Like there's a weekend in London I'm doing on my own to go and see somebody. And, you know, just, I wanted to do it. I'm doing it. So nobody else is interested. That's fine. I'll do it by myself. So a bit like Brooke, just taking.
Well, you can always call me. I'll show up for anything. I'm like in this yes mode. I literally did that. One of me and my girlfriend, she called me and I had this rule for myself. I'm like, I have to say yes anytime. I'm like trying to find these new opportunities. So if they present themselves, I won't say no. So I actually had a girlfriend call me and she wanted to go to Iceland. I had like 2 weeks to find to make this decision. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen. And within 2 weeks, I booked a ticket, planned an entire road trip around the entire country for 10 days with the two of us. Like that is one of my flaws. I do like intense takeover because I love planning trips. I love language. But my friend was super sweet about it. She was super here for it. She's like, yeah, we'll do whatever. And I was like, great. So truly, like I will say yes to virtually anything. That is
that's on my bucket list. I'd love to go there. I'd come with you.
Oh, absolutely. I'll go back anytime. I have a bunch of lovely friends there now. In London is super easy to get there from. I was thinking about stopping there on my way back when I go to London for the rowing training that I'm doing.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you go past Iceland to go to the States, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, you do. It's like a little bit out of the way, but comparatively to flying across the pond for us, like the price is like beautiful. I'm like, oh, great. This is way better. But luckily I've done enough now of experiences that I have like some points saved up. So I was able to like bring some of that back for me to do some of the rowing because I'm going to London and then like 3 weeks later I go back to Spain for the row. So
amazing.
So is this like one of your main things for how you make the connections? You connect with somebody who maybe reaches out to you. I mean, you're always looking for followers to follow what you're doing. So a follower reaches out and says, well, I've never gone to Iceland or France or Portugal or whatever. And they reach out to you, hey, are you interested in going to Portugal? You say, well, yeah, let's go to Portugal. I've never done that before. Is that the way it works?
Usually I will chat with someone first because safety is very important. I think that's critical. I've done some things like when I did Africa. That was probably my biggest trip is when I hitchhiked onto the world's deadliest train in the middle of the Sahara. That one I was very particular of like I tried to get a bunch of people to come with me too. So I'm like,
the title doesn't really, endear people to joining the trip. Let's be honest.
I swear it was like type 1.5 fun. I swear it wasn't even type 2 fun. I swear. Like it was a lot of it was like a road trip through the Sahara. And then there were some scary parts for sure. Like when I had to board the train, there was a switch off because I went by myself and I hired a guide and it was very, very out of my comfort zone. It's in a country called Mauritania, which is right underneath Morocco. And they have like very little tourism at all. And I don't know why I really felt it was important for me to do this trip. And it does have some of the best stargazing in the world, if that adds some of the appeal to it. Because you're in the middle of nowhere and then you're riding this train at night. Right. But there was a switch off where my driver dropped me off and then my guide stayed with me and then we got on the train. But then the schedule is like very unclear. So we waited there for like 10 hours. My guide was getting super nervous and antsy. It got pitch black. We're in truly the middle of nowhere. I was like, okay, this might be one of those moments like I've taken it too far. I'm stuck in the desert now. Hitchhiked, the train ended up coming. Like the law of attraction, I literally was engaging with people while I'm waiting for the train. Some guy came up, wanted to take a picture because there's very few, not only women, but like blonde women as well that are in that space. So I like stuck out like a sore thumb there.
Right.
And I had a guy come up and he's like, yeah, I just want to like take a picture with you, ask you what you're doing here. Turns out he was a train conductor. So they left the station, took the entire train car away because there's not like a designated start to the train. They have to like connect all of the train cars to the main engine. So they moved it away. My guide was freaking out. Lo and behold, the train conductor comes back. He's like, I didn't forget about you. Like, we're coming to get you. Stopped. We got in, and some of the best, like, stargazing, like, really extreme camping is what I would call it, that I've ever done in my life. So I don't know. I think it's a lot of me meeting people in person, I think, more than the other way around. So I think right now I'm trying to find people who suggest interesting stuff as well, so we can collaborate that way. It would be amazing. Like, and there's a wide variety, like things like electric acupuncture, right? You can do that at home. Like, that's on my bucket list too. Like, it doesn't have to be this crazy world trip. Whether it's like local to you or like something funny or silly, like that's, I think, how I would make most of the connections, if not like in person at those events.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I think we just set you up for the question of, if somebody wants to learn more about you and follow what you're doing, how do they follow you? How do they find out what you're doing and make that connection?
Yes. So I'm very excited. I am just sharing my first video, which is the Africa video now, and I'll be sharing weekly updates on YouTube. So that's Brooke's Joyrides at YouTube. And it's the same across all of my platforms. So it's Brooke's Joyrides on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Okay. And I'm even posting some more stories on, I'm exploring Substack a little bit, because I try and bring as much like joy and excitement to the adventures that I'm doing as I can. And I think with that, it can take away from maybe some of the heavy. Like, I think with my cancer experience, there's a lot that I would love to share with people about some of the hardships that I went through, or some of the difficulties with managing the medical system, right? Like, that's a huge undertaking to work through all that red tape. Sure. So I think in those veins, like, if anyone wants to reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, comment on things on YouTube with future experiences, questions that they have, some of the stuff we're talking about, right? Of like, what would you think about me trying this on my own? Like, I genuinely want to engage with all of those people, and provide insights to what I can from my own treatments and my own journeys, and how I'm still able to do these fun things, even though my life is pretty hard right now, honestly. It's been a lot for me to mentally deal with the fact that, like, I am a cancer patient and will continue to be a cancer patient the rest of my life. And I can't say that I'm cancer free for like at least 2 years of my life. We have to monitor a lot of different blood tests, and it's very hard to determine remission because it's on a cellular level. So it's very difficult for them to like totally pinpoint. But I'm still out here, and I still truly like love my life. I genuinely do. I still believe I'm a fortunate person, and I would love to be able to share both the heavy and the positivity with people, anyone who has like questions, or concerns. So yeah. Beautiful.
I love that. Very good.
Thank you.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the 3 things that we do at the end of every program. The second one is I go to Anne-Marie, and I'm really looking forward to it today. Anne-Marie kind of gives us a summary from her perspective of what the great takeaway is from the conversation. And I can think of about 20 that she could pick. So which one are you picking, Anne-Marie? I'm really curious.
Oh my gosh, you just made me want to go out there and live life.
I'm glad.
Like,
makes me feel good.
Like, things I hadn't thought of as you get lost in the day-to-day. But I think there's so much stuff that's come out of it, but like the whole conquering the fear and experiencing the most out of your life, and not having to wait for, you've been through a life-changing condition, but you had this mentality before. You don't have to go through that to just want to make these changes in your life. And then I think something you touched on, which I live for, is that whole connection. And I think as humans, we need that connection. It's something, just even walking past somebody and smiling, saying good morning, it can have such an impact on people's lives. So it doesn't have to be time consuming to be impactful.
Good stuff. I like it.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you got that from our chat. That makes me feel really lovely.
Oh, it was an amazing conversation. Thank you.
Anne-Marie is really excellent for this, because she is a former audience member who became a co-host on the show. So she, in my mind, she literally represents the audience.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. I love this show. I love listening to it.
I mean, it's such an important concept, too. Like, not only the daily dose of happy, and I think even small things like journaling are such a huge part of how people can find that positivity. Because I think people feel sometimes happiness and joy feel like something that you have to like have or like be born with. And I truly think it's a practice. Even mentally, like I think everyone has those days where maybe they're talking poorly to themselves in their head. And it's a matter of just remembering, like, let yourself go through that. Let yourself feel, even with like some of the cancer treatments, right? Like, let yourself sit in the sad because it makes the happy so much better. And the daily dose of happy, right? Like, give yourself that happy, like find it for yourself, write down one good thing that happened that day, and the amount of encouragement that it will give you will astound you, truly. Yeah. And also, I will say, if anyone is interested, audience members wise, to contribute and give back to some of these people, that's been part of what's been driving me too. So the road to remission is not just for me trying to kind of conquer my experience. It's actually a cancer foundation. So I do have a GoFundMe that's on all of those resources at Brooke's Joyrides, brookesjoyrides.com too, that if anyone is interested in contributing, everything will go to research for these cancers, and primarily as well education. Because like we've been talking about today, like, you have to be kind of your own advocate, whether it's for seeking that joy in your life or like for my treatments. Like, a huge part of that was educating myself again. I felt like I was honestly in like high school biology and physics again. I had to crunch all these numbers and math. And that's what the foundations are primarily for, is like building those resources for people so they can understand their treatment. Because knowledge, I think, is a lot of what builds people's like power and confidence too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Very important stuff.
Yeah.
The third thing, last thing we like to do at the end of every show is a practice that I started a few years ago, because in my lifetime, I very easily remember, I know Anne-Marie does too, the era before the internet, when we couldn't do this kind of conversation. It just wasn't a possibility. Anne-Marie in the UK, me in the New England, Connecticut area, you where you are. I mean, it just wasn't a possibility. Now it's like an everyday occurrence. And as a result of that transition into this new era, we now have a different way of interacting with people, particularly through the online methodologies. So there's the idea of self-promotion, putting yourself out there. If you're doing a business and promoting your business this way, doing the social media stuff, all those things that didn't exist before. And in the process of doing that, we're putting out what we could label free content to help people, because we're the people who do this kind of thing, which is, I think, the large majority of people, are giving back. They're trying to find some way to contribute to somebody else's benefit, and we never really hear about that, because we don't know who's consuming the content. Well, sometimes we do. Sometimes we get some feedback, but most of the time we don't. I said to myself, that's something we're kind of overlooking, that so many people are benefiting, and we're not giving ourselves credit. We're not getting credit from anybody else. So I said, okay, I'm going to change that around by saying, Brooke, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who've been hearing your story, reading your content, seeing your videos and so forth, and benefiting from it in ways you don't even know about. On their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you. I think, well, obviously you guys are too, giving me a platform to even reach those people and share, and hopefully get them to share back and interact with me. I would love to hear from them too. Like you said, we don't know who's listening, and I would love to know. And who knows, maybe I'll show up at your house, whether you're across the globe, you're my neighbor. I am always showing up at people's houses, sometimes unannounced, but I'm usually more polite about it. So.
And there are lots of ways to do it. I mean, Anne-Marie shows up at my house every week via the internet. I mean, it's like
true
a thing, right?
True. I was going to say, that's amazing. Anne-Marie, invite me.
Yeah, welcome anytime.
That's awesome. No, thank you. I mean, thank you guys for what you're doing, and thank you for having me. It's been amazing talking to you guys.
We've loved having you as well, and keep doing
what
you're doing. And just one little thought for you. You've talked quite a bit about the experience that you're going through with the cancer and so forth. And I loved it when you referred to it as an experience, because when it's an experience, it's not part of who you are. It's just something you're going through. So that makes it possible for you to leave it behind. When it becomes part of your identity, that's when it's harder to let go of something like that, and that's when it can consume you. So congratulations, for all those times that you've done that. Keep doing that. That's the part that's going to get past, and just put in the past and say, okay, that was an experience. That's all it was.
Thank you. Yes, I will try to remember that.
So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, and we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Whoops.